From We Run With You, I'm Kathy Wynn.
And I'm Rob Alvarez. This is Doing Good. This season, we interview brain aneurysm survivors and caregivers to learn how they are navigating new challenges and finding their own way of doing good.
Sometimes you win the lottery that no one wants to win. Sometimes you win it twice, like Amanda Costanza. In this interview, Amanda shares with us how 2 aneurysms and 1 extraordinary medical team propelled her into a new career, one in which her experience and perspective will be a valuable gift she can give to her patients. Hi, Amanda. Thank you for joining us.
So great
Thank
to
you
meet
for inviting me to be on. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So one thing I know about you is that you are the survivor of not one but 2 brain aneurysms. So I think one of our previous guests, you guys, and I think Kathy too, refers to brain aneurysms as the lottery that no one wants to win, but you got to win it twice. So can you tell us, how did you find out the first time, your first aneurysm? How did you find out you had it?
Absolutely. So both of my aneurysms thankfully were unruptured. So I always like to say I'm like the luckiest unlucky person in the entire world. Like you said, it's the lottery no one wants to win, but truthfully I was very lucky that we found both of my aneurysms before they ruptured and we were able to treat them before I had any significant consequences from them. But so my first aneurysm, I was 21 years old and I was in college at Penn State. And it's so weird. I like remember it like it was yesterday, but it feels so long ago at the same time. I was walking to an exercise physiology exam, was on the phone with a friend, and all of a sudden out of nowhere was like, I think I'm passing out. And it was felt like there was a screen in front of my face, my ears were ringing, and I sort of like fell over almost in the street. I kind of was able to catch myself on the side. There was a little brick wall, and I was able to lower myself to the ground, but I knew something wasn't quite right. So I said to my friend, I'm like, I just passed out in the middle of the street. I think I need you to come pick me up. So thankfully, she came and picked me up. And by the time she got there, I was feeling fine, honestly. I didn't like feel sick anymore, but I was still shaken up, obviously. And I was like, I need to go to the doctor because I need an excuse to not take this exam now. Like, I just passed out on the road. And like, I don't think I'm ready to go take this exam. And at Penn State, I had like hundreds of kids in my class. So it wasn't just an easy, oh, let me email the professor. So we decided to go to MedExpress first. And they were like, or, did you drink enough water today? Have you asking me all the questions? I'm like, no, like I'm a very health conscious person. Like I drank plenty of water, like nothing out of the ordinary today. And they were like, well, you probably should go to the emergency room because we don't see anything here, which I probably should have done in the first place, but I was trying to make it quick and easy.
Mm.
So I went to the emergency room, and I'm very glad that I did because a CT scan there showed the aneurysm. And because it did not rupture, there's no real reason for why I had this syncopal episode.
Wow.
So I think I had a little guardian angel that like shoved me in the street and it caused me to go in and get looked at because it was essentially like there would be no reason without a rupture for that aneurysm to cause that symptom. So, yeah, so they found it. They did a spinal tap, which showed that thankfully it had not ruptured. And so I went home, and my now husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, had driven up he went to Kent State, which is a couple hours drive. He came up and drove me home that night, thankfully.
Mm.
And I met with the neurosurgeon the next day. We scheduled surgery for like 2 weeks later. It was a very long 2-week wait. But yeah, so that was sort of how my first one was diagnosed.
So, sorry, Rob. So really quickly, so you went to MedExpress and everything was done there, the CAT scan and the spinal?
No, not the CAT scan, sorry. All that they did there was essentially they did like a urinalysis to make sure
Mm.
I wasn't super dehydrated. They just asked me some questions and they were like, really, if you if you feel like you want to go get some image, they were like, you're probably fine, but if you want to go get some imaging, we can't do that here. So you should go to the emergency room.
Because I
Yeah,
was
I should have
yeah,
clarified that a
because
little
I was thinking,
better.
"Wow, what Med Express is this? This is pretty legit."
No, not a fancy Med Express. It was a regular old Med Express, and they were just like, there's nothing that we can do for you here other than give you your note to not take your exam. But if
Yeah.
you feel like something's not right, and I'm a firm believer in, if you feel like something's wrong with you, like, go get it checked out. And so that I was just kind of like having this weird sixth sense of like, I don't know, something's not quite right here. So, and again, probably had nothing to do with my aneurysm at the time, the symptom that I had, but I just had this weird sixth sense, and I'm very glad that I, followed it.
So did you get excused from the test? Or did
I
you have to
did get
make that up?
eventually I had to make it up. And I was very lucky with the way that Penn State worked with me. I was, at the time, I had already applied to physical therapy school. So I'm also a physical therapist. That's probably, we'll probably talk a little bit about
Mhm.
that in the coming moments here. But at the time I had already applied to PT school, and I was like, I cannot graduate late. This was my fall semester. It was in October. So it was like the end of my fall semester of my senior year. So I was set to graduate in May. And I'm like, listen, I cannot graduate late. Like, I've already have these applications in. I'm just waiting to hear back from these schools. Like, I can't graduate late. So they allowed me. This was before like the virtual classes and stuff was cool. And I had, thankfully, my professors at Penn State were really awesome, and they allowed me to sort of learn class remotely. And then there's a branch campus for Penn State near my house, because I'm like 3 hours from main campus where I went, but about 10 minutes down the road, there's a branch campus, and they allowed me to take proctored exams there. So I was really lucky that I didn't really miss a beat with school. They allowed me to sort of make it up when I was feeling up to it,
That's very
which was
fortunate.
awesome.
That's great. Yeah.
Yes.
So that whole time between the Med Express and the ER, did you feel any other symptoms, or is it just that brief dizziness?
It was that brief dizziness, and that was really it. It's just,
Hmm.
it was weird to me because it had not happened before in my life.
Mm.
It just, something just felt really off. And I'm really not sure what caused me to actually go to the emergency room. And then once I got to the emergency room, me being the 21-year-old college student, I'm like, I'm sick of sitting here. I had been there waiting for a while, and I almost left. And I'm, again, very grateful that I didn't leave, because it allowed us to find it and treat it. And my first aneurysm was larger than my second one. It was somewhere between 12 and 15 millimeters. But it was very oddly shaped. So it wasn't necessarily fusiform. It wasn't necessarily berry shaped. It was kind of like multilobulated. It almost looks like a flower when I look at the picture of it, I think.
Aw.
So it was a very weirdly shaped aneurysm. Um,
So
and so
eventually, what did they end up doing with that? Did you get a clip, coil?
Yes, so I had a craniotomy with clipping.
Mm.
So that was in November. Again, it was like a 2-week period, between my diagnosis and when I had it treated. And my neurosurgeon is fantastic. So he's kind of like, him and his team have sort of become family. They're amazing. I know you feel the same way about your neurosurgeon. You just get this, like,
Yeah.
I can't describe it. So I'm very grateful for Dr. Wecht and his crew, for sure. But yeah, so I eventually did have a craniotomy with clipping in November. Um, yeah, and I did really well after surgery. I mean, obviously it's a little bit of it's a rocky recovery initially, but again, thankfully mine was not ruptured. It was more just getting back to my normal everyday 21-year-old life, and I'm a very active person, and so moving back into my normal routine took a little while, but I'm very fortunate that I did pretty well after surgery.
What was it like for you when hearing that the news of, well, you're going to need a craniotomy to take care of this?
Honestly, it was all like, I don't know if I didn't believe it initially, or if I just was sort of like, had this like adrenaline rush. And initially, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, they're saying it and it's going in one ear and right out the other. And again, like, I was 21, so like, I guess priorities were a little different. At the time, the next week, I was actually supposed to be going to Jamaica for my now husband's brother's wedding. And so I was really excited about that trip that I was supposed to be going on. And I remember looking at Dr. Wecht and being like, "So you mean I can't go to Jamaica?" And he's like, "No, you can't go to Jamaica." And I think, like, for some reason, that was, like, when it all hit me, like, when I started realizing the things I wasn't gonna be able to do,
Mm.
like, "You're not going back to school this semester, you're gonna be having this done, you can't go to Jamaica, you can't exercise, you can't do this, that, the other thing." And I was just that's, like, when it hit me when I started thinking of, you know, really recognizing the consequences of what that meant. At the time, this is going to sound so silly because I always knew I wanted to go into healthcare. I had healthcare classes in undergrad. I didn't know what an aneurysm was. Like, I knew I heard of it. I knew it had something to do with a stroke, and I didn't know anything other than that. So it was all like sort of a shock. And then me being the analytical person I am went home and researched, and I think that also sort of put it all into perspective. But I didn't understand, I don't think. I was not in the right mindset to understand when I first was told.
Yeah, I
If
find
that
well, yeah, fortunately for me, I couldn't I wasn't awake. I
Mhm.
when it happened to me, it had ruptured and I had collapsed. But I feel like with a lot of survivors, especially those that have had to wait. I think yours is the shortest so far that we've spoken to as far as guests, the wait in terms of when they're scheduled. I mean, we've had guests that came on that told us they had to wait for, up to 8 weeks. And we're like, what?
Yes.
That's just crazy. But I feel like do you feel that it's true that once you feel, you associate with not being able to do certain things like, "Oh, wait a minute, I can't." Well, in your case, you can't go back to school, you can't go to Jamaica, you can't do this and this and this. That's when you feel like the enormity of
Yes,
what you're going against, right? Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. I think, that is when it hits you, and simple things, not even saying, what you can and can't do, but during that 2-week period, it was like I would sneeze and I would sit there and be like, "Am I okay?" Like, and meanwhile, I probably had this my whole life and I just didn't know about it. But everything changed when I knew about it.
hmm,
It's like I had this thing probably in my brain since I was a child and never noticed it a day in my life. And then as soon as I found out about it, it's like it's the only thing you can think about.
yeah,
It's just funny the way that your mind can work like that. So that 2-week period, and I'm grateful mine was only 2 weeks. He kind of squeezed me in. I don't, into his schedule sort of, but I'm very lucky that it wasn't longer than that. My second one was a little bit longer than that. But yeah, it makes those 2 weeks feel like 2 years.
yeah.
So what was the day of surgery like for you?
So day of surgery, I just remember going in and like I was terrified and I going in, you're like, am I gonna wake up? Am I gonna wake up the same? Am I gonna remember people? Like I can't describe it. You go in and it's like, not to sound like morbid, but I'm like, you know what I mean? All these terrible things are going through your head. And I remember too, and obviously they do this for everyone when you're going into surgery, but they ask like, do you have a living will? And I'm like, I'm 21 years old. I know I don't have a living will. Like, should I? And I, the how heavy that situation is really hits you. And so the day of surgery was all sort of a blur. I went in, I remember joking with the nurses, like, "Don't shave more than this much of my hair," like, saying all these things to the nurses and, like, trying to make the most of a scary situation, but it was all sorta just a blur. I do remember the first person I saw after waking up was my aunt who worked at the hospital, and I was like, "Hey, Aunt Kathy," and she's like, "Oh my gosh," so that and I like, it's funny, I do remember that, but there's a lot of the day I don't remember. I can't describe it.
So I'm assuming they obviously told you all of what could go wrong and
Mhm.
what what deficits you may have waking up.
Exactly, and it was very difficult. It was, and again, it's one of those things, and I know, Kathy, your situation was different again because that yours happened very abruptly. You didn't have time to sort of like process and think all of that through. But the hardest thing wasn't even like, I mean, I was scared, but I was more fearful for my family.
Mm.
Um, oh, that's gonna make me get emotional, but um, sorry.
Yeah,
No,
no,
not
it's
at all.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah. So, for in Kathy's case, it was I was in her shoes, and it was even a little more surreal because okay, we're making this decision. No, I was making the decision for her to have this procedure, and
absolutely.
even then, you're like, well, I don't know. At the time, I think I knew I had a choice because they said, "Do you want to do it?" And I guess I could have
Right.
said no. Um, but I also felt like I couldn't really say no. And at the same time, they tell you all what could go wrong, and then I'm like thinking to myself, okay, if she wakes up after this surgery and they said, well, she can lose function of half of her motor function, half of her body because the way the way the operation was going to take place, which means she can't really move, right? You can't really do anything without half of your body. And I was like, I'm going to make that decision for somebody that could have that outcome that they're going to have to live with, right, for the rest of their life. So that was tough.
I honestly couldn't imagine that because like I said, still to this day, like thinking of what my family had to go through and sitting there and they weren't necessarily making decisions. Mine was thankfully a planned procedure. We had already made the decision together, but you start weighing these odds and it's like, well, if you do something, this bad thing could happen, but if you don't do something, this bad thing could happen. And I remember the doctor saying to me at one point, this is a ticking time bomb in your head. And I was like, whoa, like that, let's do something about it. Get this thing out of me as soon as we can. You know what I mean? And and there was something like for both of my surgeries, like so freeing about being like, all right, we're doing this. Like, let's get it done, get in there and get out of there. And like waking up and you feel crappy and your head's swollen and you can't see out of your eye because it's swollen. And you're like, oh, I feel so much better. Like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. So you feel crappy, but much better in other ways. And it was for me totally worth the risk and the recovery.
So where did they go in? Like, what did they have to cut?
So I had both of mine were through the same place. So my second aneurysm was actually a recurrence of the first one, essentially.
Oh,
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so they did the same incision twice. So my incision you can kind of see is like up here.
okay.
So it went from here down into like the front of my ear. You can still see my hair sort of short there, but it came down into here. So it was frontotemporal. And then this is my bone flap. After having the two surgeries, there's not much like cushion there anymore so you can kind of see it, but hey, if that's all I can complain about, that's fine. You can even kind of see my screws. I don't really
Oh,
have much
wow.
to it there. Yeah, so it was all through here. That was the bone flap there, and they put the clip. So mine was in my right middle cerebral artery, sort of like right at the bifurcation there.
Wow.
So yeah, but I mean, all in all, and sometimes the computer, I feel like you can see it more just with the sunlight and like you would never know looking at me. And I think it's amazing what skilled surgeons in medicine can do
Yeah.
and that you
Uh,
never know if I told you.
Well, I certainly didn't notice anything until
yeah.
well, but now that you
Now that you
no,
pointed
no,
it
that
out,
you pointed it out.
and I hope I'm
Yeah,
not being. I
that's
hope
my
I'm not.
battle scar. I'll take it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm not being rude, but it does look cool.
yes.
I'm like, whatever. It's kind of, part of me now.
Yeah,
So I don't mind it.
no,
And occasionally I will get people ask me, and a lot of times it will be somebody who has a loved one or who is somebody who's had brain surgery or head surgery themselves. And they're the ones who notice it. And I don't know if you noticed that, Kathy, too. Like in the community, occasionally I'll be like, that person had a craniotomy. I don't know what for, but you can just we know it a little bit more. It's
well,
kind of
no, I didn't I had a craniotomy, but mine was, like, from the back.
in the
So
back. Gotcha.
there's, like, this scar that runs right in the middle of my, mid back, the nape of my neck.
Yes.
And I've actually I've I think it's to be honest with you. It's kinda cool. I've never had my
Yeah.
hair cut be well, no, I have, but my hair was always shoulder length until the aneurysm, and then
Mhm.
it's shaved in the back. I remember one time
Rocket.
yeah, no, I remember one time, like, well, I didn't get a choice like you where I could tell the nurses, like, "Don't shave me this way," or "Don't shave this part." Well, they shaved, like, a clump here and then
Yeah.
a big old clump in the back, and so I just had my sister shave my whole hair, off when I came home, and, I remember it's kind of funny, but I don't really share, what I go through or what I had, but I remember taking my, daughter or my kids to swim practice. This is several months, obviously, after my aneurysm, and she's like, "Man, Kathy, you are really into this triathlon. Like, you're just shaving that head off to get more aerodynamic." And I'm like, "Yeah, uh-huh, yep."
Yeah, that's why.
And then later on, I think, like, a couple weeks later, I think someone told her, "Oh, no, Kathy actually had an aneurysm." She's like,
She
"Oh my
probably was
god."
like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe
She's
you
like,
said
"I'm
that."
so sorry. I didn't mean to, you know, um, make light of this situation." I'm like, "No, it's totally cool." I mean, I probably would. I need to shave off some time anyway, so maybe this will help me, but it's just funny. Yeah, I always think that, with I can't see it, but I always feel like, whenever I touch it or if someone catches a photo of me from the back and you see that scar, I always, I feel like yeah, I don't say it out
You
loud,
earned
but I
that
think, yeah,
scar.
you've
You
been
earned
you've
that
been
scar.
through yeah, it's a reminder that, you know, I went through something really, really hard and, so in a way, whatever that moment is, if I feel like, "Oh my god, everything is just so crazy or so much to do or so much left to do," and then you think about what you have gone through for over a year and you're like, "All right, this is
Shifts
nothing."
your
Yeah,
perspective a little bit when you're having a bad day. I totally
absolutely,
agree with
yeah.
that.
Mhm.
I totally agree with that. Some days I'll, like, be drying my hair and it catches it in a certain way and you can, like, really see it, and I'm like, "You can do today. Like, you can do this."
Yeah, that's that's awesome.
Well, I'm glad both of you guys can wear it proudly because, it's a badge you should wear proudly, I think. And
That's right.
I think some may be a little self-conscious depending on how it is, but I think you should wear it proudly. So
Well, we
kudos.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a little you're like, "Oh, man," like, I see that picture and it's like, "Wow, it's really obvious in that one," but then, you just kinda have to you gotta rock it.
Gotta roll with it, yep.
Right.
So you said when you woke up you immediately knew your aunt, you recognized them. What was the first, few hours or days recovery for you?
So, my first surgery, I was very nauseous and vomiting after my first surgery, and that's I don't like to vomit as it is. I don't think anyone does, but, I don't like that a whole lot, and then when your head is cut open and it's swollen and painful, it makes it a lot worse, and I was in a lot of pain after my first surgery. My surgeries, my first and second, were very different in terms of how I don't know if it's partially like I knew more what to expect, and also they pre-medicated me knowing that I was going to get sick from the anesthesia the
Mm,
second time around. So I did much better in the initial recovery period after my second one, but the first one, I'll be honest, there's not a whole lot that I remember in those first couple of days. I was in the ICU for I think just one night, and then part of the next day, and then I went to just like the neuro step down floor, and I do remember they still joke about this. In my mind, I was like, a friendly patient. I was nice to everyone. I did what everybody asked me to do. Apparently, I didn't want to get out of bed, which was very different than the second surgery. They couldn't get me to stay in my bed. But they, like, wanted me to get up and walk, and I just wouldn't do it, and then my best friend came to visit me, and she walked in the door and was like, "Hey, you wanna go for a walk?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And everybody's like, "We've been trying to get her to walk for days, and she won't get out of bed, and you come, and here she is." So, I always think that's kind of funny, and I guess, shows our friendship there that I would just get out of bed. But honestly, it's weird. I don't know if it was the medications. I don't know if it was just like something that my brain doesn't want to remember, but there's not a ton that I remember after my first surgery. It's very weird. I remember coming home and trying to get in the bathtub and like stuff like that and seeing the dog and being all excited, but it was not, I don't remember a whole lot. Again, second surgery, I remember everything. It's really weird. It's very weird.
Wow. Well, I think, probably depends on the effect of the actual probably physical operation to
Yeah,
your brain and how everything connects.
for
Um,
sure.
even if it's temporary.
Mhm.
S- So between the surgery and or how long after the surgery were you able to get back to doing your schoolwork? Because I know you said you wanted to finish, stay on
Yeah.
track, and you already missed
I
the 2 weeks, I think, right? Or at least,
Yeah, I missed the 2 weeks between, and I tried to, like, tie up loose ends and take some exams. The exam I missed, I tried to take some of those exams before my surgery, and I did do that. I'm not somebody who knows how to sit still, and I don't know how to relax, and,
I can relate.
especially because I wasn't especially because I wasn't allowed to be active. I love running, I love biking, I love, weightlifting, like, I like being active, and I wasn't allowed to do anything. So I put all of my focus into school, and I remember my doctor being like, "Amanda, like, you need to rest," and I'm like, "But that's gonna increase my anxiety even more if I have nothing to put my energy toward,
Mm.
I'll just lay around and be terrified all day." So
yeah.
I'm grateful that he let me sort of continue doing my schoolwork. So really, I would say I was in the hospital for probably 4 days, 5 days maybe. And I was back to doing some amount of schoolwork probably 2 weeks after surgery. It was hard for me to be able to, no, maybe it might have been a little longer than that. Let's say 3 weeks. But it was really hard initially to have the stamina, so I would do
Mhm.
it in very small chunks, and I was not doing full force school. Thankfully, I had set my schedule up to make for a very nice, easy senior year, and I'm grateful that I did because it allowed me to sort of be able to do what I did. But within a couple weeks, I was, back to doing some amount of schoolwork. I then was able to, for the next semester, they allowed me to do the same thing where I was able to finish from home, sort of teaching myself stuff, watching some videos that they had sent me, and then going and taking proctored exams at Penn State Beaver. So, um, yeah, within a couple weeks, I was starting to do a little, and even though I didn't have a rupture, so, I can't even imagine what recovering from that is like. The stamina after both surgeries was a problem, like,
Mm.
you think you're like, "What? I'm not even doing anything. I took 3 laps around the house today, and I did an hour's worth of schoolwork, and then I would need, like, a 4-hour nap." I was exhausted, and I couldn't understand why, and that's a frustrating thing for someone who's used to being on the go all the time. I was an otherwise healthy person. I'd never had a single I broke my nose playing basketball once, and that was, like, the only issue I'd ever had. So that was a reality check for me. Makes you more grateful once you're able to get back to things for all the things you're able to do. But yeah, I would say that. And then in terms of, like, exercise, I don't remember again, I'm, like, having a hard time remembering how long it was. I wanna say within Within a couple of weeks, I was back to, like, doing like, walking for exercise, and that was all I was allowed to do, and then gradually over time, he sort of, like, increased my weight restrictions, and I gradually got back into some more, but within a couple months, same thing, I was back to it pretty quickly.
So that's one thing we have in common is I also broke my nose playing basketball. But I was,
Did you?
yeah,
No fun.
much older in life playing recreational basketball in this city we live in. That that was the last time I played basketball in for
Since then.
rec league or whatever it is. Um, s- how long do you think, or how long would you say, until you're back to your normal routines?
Back to normal, I'm gonna say 3 months until I was, like, feeling pretty
That's
good.
pretty quick.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's pretty quick. And again, I think I was just very lucky with, um, didn't have a rupture, I didn't have a whole lot of postoperative complications other than the nausea. Um, and I was young and healthy, you know? I'm very grateful that I had a good base to start from and to build back to pretty quickly. And I think too, again, for me, like having something that I had to focus my efforts on didn't give me the opportunity to not do it. You know what I mean? I didn't have a choice. I'm like, I want to stay on track. I want to graduate on time. I like this has to happen. So that was a good thing for me. In some ways it was bad because like I said, it's like, you need to build your stamina back up and get back to it. But um overall, I think that was actually a positive thing for my recovery was
Mm.
having that something to work toward. But yeah, 3 months and I was feeling pretty good.
No, I absolutely agree that I mean, fortunate for you, I think that was a good everyone is different, as you know, during recovery and how we react or how we, handle recovery. But I think, for you, and I would have to, write on that, is that, both you and I had a good base, I mean, as you are aware, I was an avid runner, swim, bike, run, all that stuff. So it was good because and that's the crazy thing about, this disease, and I always tell people is that it doesn't discriminate, because, everyone when they found out that, I had a brain aneurysm, they're like, "But you were so healthy." It really doesn't matter, but
It doesn't.
yeah, but to your point in terms of, that's good that you were still so driven and you had that attitude to stay focused, and I think, having something to hang on to, having that determination to, okay, I'm still going to finish out my senior year. I'm going to stay on track. I mean, that's huge because I think a lot of times survivors, um, we could dwell on like why is this happening to me, and I can understand and relate with the whole stamina bit. I mean, geez, as I mentioned on one of my write up is that walking 10 steps to the bathroom felt like I was running a marathon. So
Yep.
you can just imagine like how many more days of this can I handle? Can I take? So I think for individuals like ourselves who are are kind of driven to begin with, and I don't know if it's the same case for you, but knowing that we came out of this, I mean, you got to remember, Amanda, and you keep saying it's unruptured. To me, it doesn't matter. You had a brain aneurysm and you had a major surgery. You had a craniotomy, you know? I mean, having
It's
Brain
true.
surgery.
brain surgery is not is it's not something you
Not
take
the first
light.
thing I'd choose to do.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
But the
but I
fact
do
that
think there's an amount of like, I think, and this goes for I think a lot of unruptured aneurysm people. I've been able to like communicate with lots of the aneurysm community through social media and stuff. And I do think there is an amount of like we get this survivor's guilt in a way of like, why didn't mine rupture? I think that's a real thing. And I don't know why it's like it makes you feel like, gosh, that's like, I didn't even have the real thing. You know what I mean? It was still hard, but it's like I cannot believe that mine didn't, I'm really lucky.
So
Really lucky.
do you think you felt some survivor's guilt? And how do you think it manifested?
I definitely and I still feel survive. I try not to.
Mm.
But I remember like I lived in North Carolina for a period of time, and Ellie Helton's family is from North Carolina. I don't know if you know that name, but they're really big on legislature for brain aneurysm.
Mhm.
Yes, so I met her family, and she passed away at a very young age from an aneurysm. And I remember meeting her family and being like, why didn't mine do that? And so I think it makes you realize how lucky you are. I think in a different way, and it makes me like want to help people going through similar situations. It makes me feel like, okay, now I need to help raise awareness for this so that more people can be like me, so that more people can find them and get them treated before having these devastating outcomes. So I think for me, it manifested in that, it hits me still,
Mhm.
occasionally it'll like one day I'll just be like driving to work and I'm like, oh, like what the heck, but I'm grateful that I'm still here and doing well. And it sort of drives me to want to make a difference for other people. That's how it manifests for me. And kind of going back a little bit, I couldn't have done any of this without, first of all, my fantastic medical team. I mean, my surgeons, his team, his PAs, his nurses, his front desk staff, they are literally like family to me. And I could not have recovered the way I have or had the outlook that I do now without them. And then my family and friends, like they pushed me to the finish line of all of this and they've been there every step of the way. So I felt like I needed to throw that in there too. But yeah, I think for me that guilt sort of manifests in a way that I'm like, we gotta make a bigger deal about this so people know about it.
Mhm.
If that makes
Definitely
sense.
agree.
And that's why we wanted to talk to you, Amanda.
I love it. And that's why I'm so appreciative that you guys, that you do what you do for the aneurysm community. I know me and many others are very grateful for what you all do. So thank you.
Yeah. So Kathy, if I it's okay for me to speak for you. The way it manifested for her, it was just she was like pushing herself to a point where she ended up back in the hospital after running a 5K because she pushed herself so hard. So she just threw herself into triathlons and all these races, and which didn't make sense. And I think she was struggling with processing all that. Yeah, and she ended up back in the hospital, in the ER after a race. And so we're thinking, I started thinking, I said, we need to really, we had a heart to heart. We need to channel this energy to something, less harmful for you and also more positive. And that's how we ended up starting We Run with You,
Mhm.
actually.
I
So
love it. Combining your passions. It's good stuff.
yeah. So I mean, other than kind of that living with a little bit of survivor guilt that creeps up every once in a while, did did that experience change you in any way? Um,
A lot.
like, okay,
A lot, I would say. Yeah, I think it just changes your perspective on like random day-to-day stuff. It's something you think about every day. And I don't think that'll ever go away to an extent. You think about it less, but it's something you think about every day and you're grateful that, you survived it and all of that. For me, it kind of also changed it sort of changed my career path.
Mm.
So, like I said, I had already applied to PT school to be a physical therapist. When I was diagnosed with my first aneurysm. So I graduated from Penn State and I got my doctorate in physical therapy from Elon University in North Carolina. And I worked as a PT for over 4 years, and I loved being a PT. So I always feel like I need to back that up. Like I loved being a PT, and I could continue being a PT and be very happy. Um, but I think my aneurysms made me realize too how much I really liked the medical side of things. And so it was something I had realized I liked more of as I was a PT. And even when I was in PT school, I was like, wow, what they're doing over there is pretty cool with all that, some of the more medically based things. And then when I was diagnosed with my second aneurysm, that's actually what sparked my interest in going back to. I'm now in physician assistant school. So I'm going to school to become a physician assistant at Pitt, and I'm set to graduate in December. So
who
it even sort of, yeah, it's coming. Can't come soon enough, but we're getting there. But it sort of changed my career perspective as well. And um, I'm still not 100% certain what field I want to be in, but I'm 99% sure it will be neurosurgery.
Mm.
I think, my experience just I think I get it. I get it when patients come in and they're having something bad. And obviously everybody's different, so I can't say I totally get it, but I feel like I have a different perspective that might help someone through that. And the brain's an amazing thing. I love learning about it. I love being able to like help people through things that they're going with in that. So it sort of also changed my career path, I would say.
So I mean, but that's definitely a perspective you could bring into that work that I
Mhm.
think very few can. And I think it's important to be able to relate, to into that level with patients. I think is very important. So,
Well
For sure.
well,
yeah.
I think
I
it'll give
just
me
feel
a
like
unique perspective.
no, I just feel like in terms of if I was a patient coming in and, um, having you, go through what I'm about to go through or what I'm going through right now, I think that's gonna be such a huge benefit, not just for the patients, but, I think in a way this could also be, I don't know, uh, not trying to, um be a psychologist or anything here, but this would be a way for you to tell yourself like, this is why I'm still here so that I can
Exactly.
this is my way of giving back. And what better way, I mean, gosh, if you really think about it, I that and that's the and I'll be honest with you, Amanda, this is the one reason why I wanted to interview you and talk to you is because I feel like what you are doing for this community, whether it's being on this show or doing the walks and for brain aneurysm awareness or bringing awareness to others, but just the fact that you are now becoming a physician assistant and 99, I'm pretty sure it's 99.9999 after this will be in the neuro field. It's just, I mean, can you imagine it? What a gift you're giving yourself and to future patients who will get to be with you because they're going to have you're going to have such a deeper connection with them, and they're just going to feel so much safer. I can just imagine like the amount of just the amount of weight that's going to come off of their shoulders knowing that, oh my gosh, she is my physician, she is so stinking awesome already, and she knows exactly what I'm going through and what I will be going through. So for me, that is the reason why I feel like you're still here. And if that guilt ever creeps up on you, you just stay focused and say, the next patient that goes through that door, I'm giving back, and this is the reason why I'm still here.
And honestly, like, that's how I kind of look at it. And like I said, like, even after my first surgery and when I was working as a PT, it's something I was always like, wow, like, that would be really cool. Like, I would really enjoy that. And I think like we said, kind of combining passions. Like, I love being able to help people and helping in a medical setting. And then being able to sort of have my passion for brain aneurysms and neurosurgery in general, being able to combine those two is really cool. Like my job and my passion. Um, but I think I don't even know where I was going with that, but it's just I feel like that you're right. That is sort of why that second one happened. I remember waking up from surgery. It was something I'd talked to my mom about before, like, oh, that would be really cool. I woke up from my second surgery and I was like, I'm going home and I'm signing up for organic chemistry the day that we get home because I need to apply to PA school and that's what I need to take to get in. And that's what I did. I came home and during my recovery, I took organic chemistry online and so that I could apply as soon as I could. And that's exactly what I did. And that gave me, even in my early post-op phases, it really gave me like a purpose, I think, and helped me. Just like I said, I need something to focus my energy on. After my first surgery, it was school. After a second one, it was like getting into school.
Mm.
And then I joked with Dr. Wecht, I'm like, if we're gonna keep doing these surgeries, like somebody better start paying my tuition here. I don't know. They keep inspiring me to do other things. I don't know, but
Wait, so where were you in your this point in your life no, during the second, and how did they discover you had a second one?
yeah, so this was in 2020. Well, actually, I guess it was December of 2020. So it was kind of in the middle of the pandemic too.
Mm,
I was working as a PT and at this point I was getting follow-ups. We had increased the time to every 3 years. So my aneurysms were 7 years apart. So I would gotten like one, and then we did 3 years, and then we did another 3 years. So at that 7 year follow up, I had just gotten my CTA. That was what we were monitoring with, and it was like 4 p.m. on a Friday, and I was at work, and I got a notification to my phone that my test result had updated. I don't, every hospital system has different ways of doing it, but at UPMC, they will notify you. And it showed on that scan that I had a recurrent aneurysm. And I was like, what am I looking at? This is wild. So that was how I found out. I met with my surgeon, and again, I absolutely love him. He's fantastic. It was just that what they think happened is, my aneurysm, my initial one had sort of a wide neck. And it was likely that, they sort of clipped that, and the rest of that artery was somewhat diseased as well. That's kind of what they said. It's like it was a fragile artery, and it just sort of came off of the side there, and it was much smaller than the first one, but it was, it wasn't there on my previous 3 year imaging. And so it was something that we, again, I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm active. It was something that we felt like was appropriate to take care of. So I had gotten an angiogram, and during that angiogram, again, I have they think that all of my arteries are like a little bit fragile. For being somebody who I don't have any family history of this. I don't have high blood pressure. I actually have low blood pressure. I don't smoke. I don't really have any of the risk factors. But during my angiogram, like even one of my arteries was sort of like nicked, it was like a random fluke. And so there was an injury to one of my arteries, and we had to wait 2 months to let that heal before I could have my second surgery. So I still worked as a PT on 5-pound weight restrictions for 2 months before my surgery because I couldn't sit at home and do nothing. And then so Dr. Wecht decided that the best thing to do was to just do another craniotomy with a second clipping. So I had that done. Again, it was during COVID, so it was like a very different scenario than my first aneurysm, because I was only allowed to have one family member with me. I begged and pleaded, and they were like, "I'm sorry, this is like we have no control over that." So my mom got to be the lucky one to come to the hospital with me. I don't think she would have let anyone else be the person. She wanted to be the person. But so she came with me, and I had the second clipping. Yeah, like I said, about 2 months later.
At this point, were you already thinking about changing careers or career paths?
Before I was diagnosed with the second aneurysm, like I said, it was always something that I was like, wow, that's really cool. That would have been great. But I wasn't willing to take a leap of faith and go back to school and take on student loans again, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it was something that I thought about, but not very seriously. And then when I was diagnosed with my second aneurysm, and again, I love the medical team that worked with me. So his PA, Larry, he's now retired. I wish he wasn't, but I loved him. He had a big, impact on me as well. And when I started going into having to have my meetings with them again and all that stuff, and we were planning surgery, that was when I really started thinking about it. And I started doing some research on like what it would take to actually go ahead and apply. So it was something that was brewing in my mind, but I don't think I would have actually acted on. And then when I had the second surgery, I was like, life's too short. And I think this is like my greater calling. And so I'm just going to go for it. And so far, I'm very glad that I did. I think it was a good move for me. And again, I loved being a PT, but I'm still using all of the skills that I learned as a PT in what I'm doing now. I think I'm still getting to work with patients and do what I love. So I think it'll be a very good fit for me.
I may be biased, but I think it's a perfect fit. And well, we're a little bit late, but we do want to congratulate you on getting your white coat a couple months
Thank
ago, right?
you. Yes, I did, and it's very exciting. So it's like official, and now I'm in my clinical rotation, so it really starting to feel like, pretty soon here I'm gonna be a real life PA, and it's very exciting.
So I understand your mother was the lucky one, right? That got to come in to the or during the surgery for the second aneurysm. Now, were you married then? Had you gotten married to Ryan, right? Your then
Yeah,
boyfriend, now lucky husband?
yep. Yep. So we had been married for we just had our 5th anniversary. So we must have been married for around like 3 years when I had my second aneurysm. And he would have loved to be there, but my mom is like one of those people, she's, like, very on the ball, she is a very good patient advocate, she is, like, someone who she
Mm,
needed to be there for and I was fine with that because, like I said, like, I knew I would be very well taken care of when she was, like, the one sort of keeping an eye on things.
okay.
So, yeah, she won that battle. Ryan didn't really even try because he knew he wasn't gonna win that battle. But it was good,
Smart
I
man.
still, he got to he would FaceTime me, him and the dog would FaceTime me to do a little FaceTime visit. And again, my second surgery, I was much more alert afterwards. I remembered a lot more. I was requiring less pain meds. I was not nearly as nauseous. So I was in a much better place after my second surgery. I also had it figured out. I don't think I realized how sore my jaw was going to be after the first surgery. You don't realize it, but they go through this temporalis muscle, which is one of your big jaw muscles.
Mm.
Um, and I could, like, barely open my mouth, and so the second time around, we realized that bless you, that's my dog.
Aw.
Is he
Around,
like,
just sneeze. Um, the second time around, I realized, like, okay, so Ryan would drop off to my mom to bring into me in the hospital smoothies because, like, that was the thing that I'm somebody I need to eat. I get hangry, but you can't open your jaw very wide. That's not so good for nutrition. So he would like bring me in these like protein smoothies, and I was eating and drinking more, and I was getting up and like doing laps around the halls. I'm not kidding. The nurses are like, "What is this girl doing out there?" Like they thought I was crazy, but I was in a much better place after my second surgery than I was my first.
Yeah, you probably didn't even wait for your PT, right? You're like, I'm my own PT. I'm gonna
I'm ready to
do
go.
whatever.
That's exactly right. I remember the PTs coming and I was like, "Hey, I'm a PT too." I was all excited when they came to walk with me and stuff. But yeah, and that's part of it too. I think the second time around, not only did I know more about what I was getting into because I had been through it once, but also I had, I knew more about it after going to PT school and treating patients and things. I mostly worked in outpatient orthopedics when I was a PT, but I still, did see patients who had aneurysms, who had strokes of other kinds, and so I think I was better. I'm somebody I like to know what's going on. I watched videos of surgeries before I went in for my own. I like need to know what's happening. So for me, I think having been through it the second time around was easier.
Fast forward a little bit to, I guess, last year. What got you, or what made you decide to do the 3,000 challenge with We Run With You? And
Yeah, so we had communicated online a bit. Again, it's so awesome that we have social media the way that we do now. I've gotten to communicate with people all over the world that have
mhm.
aneurysm. There's a girl in Brazil I recently talked to. There's somebody in London who just had surgery last week. Like I've gotten to talk to so many different people that are experiencing these. It's unfortunate that it happens to all of us, but at the same time, it's nice to know we have a community of
Yeah.
supportive people and a lot of young females. Again, like we said, aneurysms don't discriminate, and it's nice to see other people who are relatively like young and active like we are, to see how you will do. But so I had been following Kathy and her story for a while, and I saw that you all were doing that, and I was like, wow, that's a really great idea. I have to get involved. And so, yeah, it was just kind of like after following along and seeing your story. And then it actually inspired me and Dr. Weck to run a 5K together
I saw
after
that.
the fact,
oh,
which is
that's awesome.
yeah. So yeah, I got involved with the challenge and I'm glad I did.
Well, I was very excited. I get really excited when anybody joins my crazy challenges. But, for me, especially, it's just, I feel like with the community and I again, I will once again be biased, but I always feel like the brain aneurysm community is just absolutely welcoming, you know? I mean, everyone's just a really big cheerleader and in such a sincere, um way as well. It's not just like, "Oh, happy anniv" it's just like, we really I almost feel like I'm I feel like their success is like my success too, I feel
Yeah,
like, yeah,
I feel
if
that.
they can do it, then all of us can do it, and it's just like such a huge reminder, um, that it's important to share this our story because I think like I said, so many people could dwell on the why me and why is this happening to me. But if we continue to share our success, I just feel like it will give so much more hope, not just saying it, but seeing it. Um, so for me, having anyone join our challenge, it's it makes me giddy, and I get so excited because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they're gonna take on this challenge with me," and again, it almost feels like, I'm not doing this alone. It's a huge challenge, but I'm not doing it alone because I have, like, Amanda, I have Robbie, I have, um, Shelly or Jennifer, pushing me along the way, and, it
Exactly.
makes it fun. It makes it fun, but at the same time, we're doing good with what we love, right? So
That's
so,
exactly
again,
right.
thank you for joining that cause.
Yeah, it is great to have just like I said, a community of people who it's unfortunate the way we're all connected, but we've all had sort of everybody's experience is different, but we've all had sort of similar experiences, and I know that like we can all sort of rely on each other, and like I said, now we're getting like I know that you've raised so much awareness, you're getting more and more people into your challenges, and like it's just really cool to see how it spreads like wildfire when we're all getting involved and communicating. And yeah, it's really inspiring.
Is there anything that you would like for organizations like we run with you to do more of for the community?
Honestly, I feel like all of the organizations that I've been like a part of so far, I feel like we're on the right track. When I think back to the resources that were available and the opportunities to spread awareness and be involved in the communities from my first aneurysm to my second aneurysm, I mean, maybe it's just me feeling that way and getting a little like older and more involved in it, but like think of how different that world is now than it was back when my first aneurysm was in 2013, right? Like I think what you all are doing is exactly what we need. It's just and it's growing so quickly, but I think we're on the right track. If that makes sense. Like we just got to keep doing what we're doing and get more people involved and more people posting about it. Social media is a very powerful thing, and I think there's been more of that, and especially, I mean, again, it's unfortunate we're all connected in this way, but there's also been a lot of more like famous people that have had aneurysms recently, and I think that's helping to raise awareness. But between all of the organizations and what you all are doing to raise awareness and spread it to more and more people, I think we're on the right track here. I think it's getting there. We're growing. We're helping people understand more about it. Like I
Um,
said, I mean, every day, at least once or twice, probably a month, somebody reaches out to me from somewhere random that came across my page and saw what I've been through. And they're like, I'm having surgery, or I was just diagnosed with an aneurysm. What are your thoughts on this or that? And that's all just from us posting and being, being transparent with what happened. And that I think that's it's not for everyone to like share. Not everybody wants to share everything that's happened to them. And I totally understand that. Like I'm kind of an open book about it, but I wasn't always that way. I think, after my second one and more so as I've gotten further out from my surgeries, I'm more comfortable talking about it. It's a hard thing to talk about, but I think more and
Mhm.
more people are comfortable with that, and it helps other people be more comfortable with it and more comfortable with reaching out to the community and getting involved in things and asking questions, and again, that helps to spread it to more people when more are getting involved in challenges and stuff. So, and I like that your challenges make us get active too. So keep doing that. It's a good thing.
I try, and, I will follow along with you in terms of, sometimes it is very difficult for individuals to, share their stories because, a lot of times, when I especially when I share my story with a big crowd or at a post marathon after party or whatever it is, you get you relive it, and sometimes you just don't want to relive it, and so you don't share. um and a lot of times with so I have my personal page, and then we have the We Run With You page. And so in the past, I've always was hesitant on sharing about like my running, my biking, my swimming, and I'm like, oh my god, who the heck wants to hear all this? But it's, for me, that is part of who I am. And in a way, I've just kind of owned it at this point, because I was like, well, you know, I've had an aneurysm. I'm still doing what I'm doing, because our whole motto, our whole mission is to be able to get people, especially, and it just so happens that we reach the athletes, the avid runners, the cyclists, the swimmers, people who like to do crazy challenges. And for me, just to post on there that, okay, yeah, I did this run or I did this bike, and then they see me, and then they see the tag brain aneurysm survivor, that is when they reach out to me via DM. And there's just so many, and I'm like, oh my gosh, all right. So for the sake of sounding, vain, if I put all my my workouts on there, but it's just to let people know that you
Yes,
can get back to doing what you love.
exactly.
And we did exactly just that, this year when we ran with Laura at LA
Mhm.
Marathon. And so for individuals like yourself and so many others that have come back once or twice, or just even want to trust us enough to be part of the challenge, it's, for me, it's such a reward. You can't imagine. And a lot of times, I'm like, "What? Do they even wanna be on this podcast?" Like, who because, we're very small, and I kinda like it that way. Hopefully, I think it'll be a little bit bigger next year once we, en route to, giving out our first We Run With You grant. But right now, I really like the community where it's just so intimate. People are really invested in how well everyone is doing,
It's
you
so
know? So, yeah. So, yeah, it's for me, this is like a highlight, getting to talk to you, getting to talk to Cheryl. From as you mentioned, you get to meet so many people with social media. We got to interview Cheryl from Australia, and and Andrea from the
See,
Philippines.
like, that is
We
so
may get
cool.
to,
I how
right?
how cool is it that, like, you're able to just, like, talk to people from all over the place, from all walks of life, all because this terrible thing that's happened to all of us, like, we're making a good thing out of it, right? Like, and that's like
Yes.
we said, like, just like I feel about going into, like, and how you said maybe that was, like, my reason for why I survived and why I'm doing well, is so that I could do that. Like, this is your thing. Like, this is awesome. This is why you're here, and to spread awareness and to change other people's lives and perspectives on what they're going through. So it's huge. It's awesome when we can do that and put our energy towards something that is doing good. Like, really, I mean, how cool is that?
Before we close, is there anything that you wanted to share that we didn't get into, or do you have any advice for anyone out there going through what
Yeah,
you've
I
gone through?
think one of my adv pieces of advice, I guess, would be, after going through all of this and having both aneurysms, and then, random side note, I've also had a spontaneous vertebral artery dissection, which randomly happened last March. Um, and all of after surgery, like I said, it's freeing because you're like, wow, this thing is gone. I have a clean bill of health. I'm doing well. But I'd be lying if I said it's not something I thought about every day and wasn't afraid was going to happen again, right? Like, so the big thing for me is take care of your mental health. I think, whether that be, for me, it's exercise, which I'm going to have to figure something else out while I can't do anything with this Achilles tendon of mine, but exercise. And then I think, talk to somebody, talk to other survivors. If you need to talk to somebody who's like actually a therapist, do that. I think it's something, when we have these things happen, we all think that we should just, especially with an unruptured one. To me, I was like, I didn't even have a rupture. Why am I so like emotional after surgery? Or like, why is this something I can't stop thinking about? Or why am I so afraid to get on an airplane again when my doctor told me I'm going to be just fine? Like things like that. And every first that you have after surgery, when you're feeling terrified and you're like, nobody gets it. Somebody gets it out there. Somebody's had the similar thoughts as you. So for me, like the things that have helped me the most were talking to people that have been through similar situations. For my second surgery, me and I don't know if you know Alicia Smart, but she also was having surgery the
Mhm.
same week as me, or maybe like a week or two later. Like we went through that together. Like talk to somebody else who's going through it and talk, like get professional help if you need it. We all like to brush that under the rug, but it was really helpful for me after my second surgery. And I wish that I had done it after my first. It's a heavy weight to carry, you know, but you don't have to do it alone, I guess is my point there. So that's my last parting word of advice to people going through this.
Well, Amanda, thank you so much for taking this time to share your story with us. For one, definitely have to say you are amazing. I
You.
think your perspective is going to be a gift you will have for your patients once you get through, um, your clinicals and all that, and become a PA.
Become the real
And
deal. I do have a pediatric
yeah,
neurosurgery rotation coming up, which I'm very excited about.
wow.
So
So yeah, I mean, I think even not only patients but to family members that you may be talking with, I think that's a real gift you can give is your perspective having
mhm.
gone through it. And also just big kudos to you for leaving yourself open, available for people in social media to reach out to you, in times of need and when they may be struggling with the mental part of this ordeal, right? So just being positive and open, that is definitely what our world and our community needs. So thank you so
And
much.
thank you guys for having me on. Like I said, I feel like I've followed your story for years now and we've communicated online but have never like gotten to have a sit down chat. So this was really fun and I'm happy to be able to, be with you guys and continue spreading awareness for all this stuff that you guys are doing. So thank you.
Well, this was certainly a treat for me and for Rob, and yeah, I'm just like I said before, we're very appreciative of anyone who wants to join our tribe, and yeah, it gets us excited. It gets us wanting to do more and do more good. So thank you again
Maybe
for
once
making the
my
time.
Achilles is better, we'll have to plan like a trip race of some sort and we can get as many people there like in person. We should try to do something like that. Maybe that's my idea for what we'll do next. We'll get like a mutual like something. Even if it's not a huge race cuz after this I don't know how I'm going to be, but like something.
Well, I'm not going to jump the gun, but there's going to be something big in
Ooh, that's
2024.
what I like to hear. I'll be waiting.
For the north,
Well,
for let's just say for the northeast families and friends.
Perfect. We can make that
And
happen.
yep, yep.
yeah.
So keep doing what you're doing, Amanda. Keep doing good.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me.
We Run With You is a nonprofit with a mission to improve the lives of people suffering from brain injury and disease by funding research, raising awareness, and providing support for survivors and their families. Find out more at werunwithyou.org. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a comment or review. Until next time, keep doing good.